So, it is my pleasure to deliver this talk in the framework of ICMSO. And I should really congratulate Mr. Olalewo for organizing this webinar despite of the current crisis. It is very important to maintain the research trend despite of what is going on. Okay, so the title of my lecture is Vector Value Matrix and Peirov-Fils point theorem. Why vector value matrix? It is because the notion of positive vectors and generally positive maps is getting more and more interest for many reasons. Because in the real world, one faces a different phenomena which involve many variables. So when you have a set of variables, and it is known that with empirical data, most of them are non-negative. And we know already the positivity, meaning simply the non-negativity in the usual sense. Now, when we have a set of data, how can we count them at while dealing with a multi-criteria optimizations? We have many sets of criteria to deal a simultaneous define a proper order. So the purpose of this lecture now is firstly to introduce the notion of positivity in a very basic way. Positivity in a Banach space and the corresponding notion of positive operators. Secondly, I would like to introduce the concept of vector value matrix, also called generalized matrix in the sense of Peirov. In this case, it will be like the usual matrix, only that it will be vector value. And as an application, I will show Peirov-Fils point theorem, which is a generalization of the contraction mapping principle, also known as Banach-Fils point theorem. Okay, the notion of positivity is unavoidable in applied science. As I was saying, this is due to the intrinsic nature of the real world. And in the real world, we are often constrained to run mathematical models. And in most of the cases, they involve measuring empirical real magnitude, such as population, or density or matters. Of course, you know that even when blood pressure are negative, one can rescale them to be always positive in Kelvin scaling. Okay, we have also pressure, we have also chemical concentrations, and so on. So we have generally to have a portfolio of data. Furthermore, I will state, I'd like to mention at once that Peirov theorem was motivated by the solvability of some differential systems. Now, the general setting. So, what do we mean by positive vectors? Okay, we need first to define the notion of cone, because the positivity we talk about will be positivity with respect to a cone. So what is a cone? Our cone will be supposed to be topologically closed. Furthermore, it has to be stable under addition. If K is the subset, has to be non-empty closed, then K plus K must be contained in K. Lambda times K must also be contained in K for all non-negative lambda. And the intersection of K and its opposite must be reduced to the known vector. In other words, the cone we are dealing with are closed convex cones. There are some authors which consider only these properties or conditions, I and II, to define a cone. But in our case, we'll consider also this third condition as well as the topological closeness. In other words, to be precise, we are dealing with cones which are closed convex with vectors at 0. Given a cone, it is important to realize automatically that we have a canonical ordering. And this canonical ordering is defined X and Y from a Banach space. X, we have Y succeeding X if and only if the difference of Y and X is an element of K. This ordering is actually a partial ordering in the sense that it is reflexive. The reflexivity is due to the is due to the fact that the known vector is in K. Because if we take any x, x minus s is the known vector. So we have that x subset x. Okay. It is also anti-symmetric. Why? Because if x subsets y and y subsets also, if y subset x and x also subset y, then we have not only y minus s in K, but also x minus y in K. And because of this third condition, we have s minus y both in K and in minus K. Therefore, it has to be equal to 0. So given a cone in our sense, this ordering is reflexive, anti-symmetric, and the transitivity is I. Okay. Being now an ordering, we can check easily that the two following compatibility properties are satisfied, exactly like a usual relation in R. When y subsets x, then we can add the same element and preserve this ordering. So we have y plus z that also subset, or we can simply say greater than or equal to x plus z. In the same way, we can multiply both elements by a non-negative number and still preserve this inequality. That is precisely the ordering. Now, it is also important to realize that if we have an ordering, then as soon as this ordering is compatible with the algebraic structure of the given Banach space, the following set K which is the set of elements of E, is a cone. We have an equivalence between the concept of cone, which is a closed convex cone with vertex at 0, and that of ordering compatible with the algebraic structure of the given Banach space. So let me briefly recall that we are considering Banach spaces, but until now, the concepts which are defined are also valid just for norm spaces. And a Banach space is just a complete norm spaces. So for the junior students who are attending it. Okay. So given a cone and a Banach space, the pair xk is what is called another Banach space. If it was just a norm space, we'll speak. Let us give some examples. We have the usual ordering in R. So R plus is a cone of the real line R. As we can see, y is greater than or equal to x in R, if and only if, of course, the difference y minus x is in R plus. Also, giving any natural number n, R plus power n, the n Cartesian product of R plus is a cone of the Euclidean space Rn. So this cone gives rise to the following ordering. That is a vector y greater than or equal to vector x if and only if the difference y minus x is in R plus to the power n. This means that every component of y minus s is greater than or equal to 0 in the usual sense. So the positivity of a vector here simply means the non-negativity of all its components. Okay, now some non-trivial examples. If we take the subset of non-negative functions which are continuous on the closed interval 0, 1, then it is not hard to check that it is a cone in the sense given above. And while the set, of course, is keep with the mass norm or the supremum norm, we can observe that this ordering means that f is greater than or equal to 0 in the general sense if and only if f of t is greater than or equal to g of t for all t in the closed interval 0, 1. More generally, we could change the domain, take it to be any compact subset of a matrix space, and we have the same example similarly. Now, for these first three examples, we have the standard positivity. The next example shows that the positivity we are dealing with is not in the usual sense. So still in the set of continuous function, more precise space of continuous function depend on 0, 1. We can consider the set of function f times 2t minus 1. This means simply that we are considering the collection of functions. P is again a cone that is non-empty, again an element of P of a non-negative real number, and the intersection of P and function. So this example of cone is useful when we are looking for some solutions of functional equations with prescribed sign, because here you realize that the sign of f is non-negative on the interval 0, 1 over 2, and is non-positive on the interval with endpoint 0, 1 over 2, and non-negative on the complement, that is on interval 1 over 2, 1. In other words, it has the same sign as this function. Okay. Now I would like to underline a difference between the boundedness that could be considered or fail even when we consider an interval of our other Banach space. Here by an interval, we mean just a set of functions lying between two given elements with respect to the ordering. So we consider C1, that is the set of continuously differentiable functions on 0, 1, equipped with its standard norm, the supremum norm on C0, augmented by the supremum norm of the derivative of the functions. Okay, so it is well known that C1 equipped with this is indeed a Banach space. Now we consider this cone K1. It is closed. It is with vertex at 0. It is stable under addition and stable under scalar multiplication by a non-negative real number. However, if we consider this interval, this is an interval of the other Banach space C1. So this means that f of t is greater than or equal to -1 and less than or equal to 1 for all t. Now we can observe that this interval is not bounded with respect to the norm of C1. To realize this, it suffices to take this set of functions f in this n, because the derivative is n pi times cosine of n pi t, and the supremum norm of the derivative is n pi. So without even the supremum norm of fn, you see that this is unbounded. So in order to control the boundedness of an interval with respect to the ordering, it is important to define the concept of normal cone or monotone norm. Okay, we say that a cone is normal when for every S and Y, so that S precedes or say is less than or equal to Y, then the norm of S is less than or equal to C times the norm of Y. Okay, here we require X and Y also to be non-negative. So we may put here 0 less than or equal to S less than or equal to Y implies the norm of S less than or equal to C times the norm of Y, where C is a positive number. Of course, it is easy to realize that if this inequality is true and K is non-zero, then C has to be greater than or equal to 1. In case C is equal to 1, we speak of a monotone order Banach space, or we say also that the norm of this order Banach space is a monotone. As you can see, that is actually monotonicity. So we have S less than or equal to Y implies norm of S less than or equal to norm of Y. Of course, for X and Y, positive vectors, and a C equal to 1 in the case of monotonicity. Okay. Other special codes in general. So we say that a cone K is reproducing or generating if the Banach space S is equal to K minus K. This minus is the algebraic minus. That is, every element of S can be decomposed as the difference of two elements of K. Also, we have the notion of totality. We say that a cone is total if K minus K is dense in S. That is, the closure of K minus K is equal to S, showing that a reproducing cone is also a total cone. Okay, there's also the notion of solid cone, which is not written here. And I would like to observe that, for instance, if the interior of the cone is non-empty, then we have also the notion of totality, which sometimes is considered as a solid cone. Okay. There are some other Banach spaces. Some other Banach spaces called a Banach lattices. This is when the notion of least and when the notion of least upper bound and greatest lower bound are defined. So, in case every two elements has a least upper bound, and in particular, we can then define a kind of modulus of an element F as the least upper bound of F and its opposite. But in the second, we will not consider too much this concept. Okay, so in order to control also the norm with respect to the ordering, there is this notion of order continuous norm, but it is just for the sake of giving the general terminology of this notion. So here you have a definition of a positive operator, and it means simply that the operator leaves invariant the cone. This notion is important while dealing with linear functions. We want to be positive because one can easily prove that the only linear functional which is positive, or say non-negative to be precise, in the standard sense is the non-functional. That's why it is relevant to think of functions which maps positive elements to positive elements. So this is the general notion of positivity about maps. Okay, given a cone, we can define also its dual cone, and it is not hard to check that the set K star defined here is actually a cone called the dual cone of K. Okay. Now, I would like to introduce concepts of vector value matrix. So first of all, it will be a map defined from Rm into Rm plus. Okay, here we'll require D to be more precisely in Rm plus, not vaguely in Rm. Okay, so this set K is the codomain of our map D. So it will be called a metric if it satisfies the similar conditions of the standard metric. So D of xy will be 0 if and only if s equal to y. And we require symmetry. D of sy equal to D of yx for all xy in capital X and the vector space. But here our capital X is okay, the non-empty set. It's not necessarily a vector space. It is the set on which we are defining D. And thirdly, we require the triangular inequality. But note that this is the ordering on Rn. So this should mean that the difference between D of sy plus D of yz and D of xz is a positive vector of Rm. Okay, to clarify this definition with respect to what is well known, a pair XD is a generalized metric space in a pair of sense if D is a vector value with M components, D1 up to Dm, where each of the Di's is defined from X plus X into R plus is a pseudo metric. It is important to observe that each Di is not necessarily a metric. So D of SS equal to 0 if S is in S. Let's say simply for all X, small x, capital X, Di is symmetric as D index I of xy is equal to D index I of yx for all xy in capital X, and Gi of xz less than Gi of xy plus y of yz. So Di is a pseudo metric. Why not a metric? Because we don't require Di of xy to be 0 if and only if s equal to y. That is not the case. However, observe that to have this set of pseudo matrix as a generalized metric, the Di's vanish simultaneously for x, y, if and only if x is equal to y. So when we have a pseudo metric D, and the pair SD is a generalized metric space. So this metric is going to be a particular cone metric. Observe that K is a cone. This set K is a positive cone. So later we can replace it by any other cone, and Rm can also be replaced by any other Banach space. Okay. Now, in order to state the generalized Banach-Fils point theorem discovered by Peyrov, we recall the notion of convergent matrix. A matrix converges to zero matrix if its iterates converge to a zero matrix. And this is in fact a proposition well known in algebra or numerical analysis. So a square matrix is convergent or converges to 0 if and only if one of these three conditions is satisfied. In fact, these three conditions are equivalent. So the first, that is the definition or what we are requiring. The second is that the spectral radius of A is less than 1. So we call that the spectral radius is the maximum of modulus of the eigenvalues of A. And they are finitely many. So if all the moduli of the eigenvalues are less than 1, then it is done. This is equivalent to the fact that I minus A is regular. I minus A is regular. That is invertible. And moreover, when we have invertibility, we have these expansion. I minus A inverse is equal to I plus A squared plus A cubed up to infinity. That is the sum of the powers of A with the powers ranging from 0 to infinity. Okay, so we need to define the notion of a contractile map given a generalized metric space. So let XD be a generalized metric space. A map T from X into X is said to be contractile if there exists a matrix, square matrix, such that, okay, the distance between T of U and T of V is less than or equal to M times the distance between U and V. So here, our distance D is defined from X cross X into R plus N, R plus N. So D is a R plus N value metric. So if we preserve M, we should have put here M, but we can continue with this. So you observe that in case D is an ordinary metric, we require just M to be a constant less than 1. Constant less than 1, we cover it. Now, okay, I will skip this proof. It is basic for those who really like to understand how the three previous conditions are equivalent. Okay, now theorem is similar to Banach-Larson principle, but we'll be dealing with matrices instead of constants. So SD being a complete generalized metric space, that is a generalized metric space for which, or say in which every Cauchy sequence converges. Because using the generalized metric, that is the vector value metric, we can also define the concept of open balls. We can define concept of convergence. And so, under the assumption that T is contractile with a Lipschitz matrix M, T has a unique fixed point U star. Moreover, we have this error estimate. And this is similar to what is known for the contraction mapping principle. Okay, so more generally, we can consider the corresponding homotopy results. Homotopy results. Sometimes we have to deal with equations of the form, let's say, h of u1 equal to u. And we are able to immerse the problem into a curve or a family of problems of the form h of u lambda equal to u, with lambda between 0 and 1. So in that case, people look for conditions under which the existence of a fixed point for h dot 0, that is hu0 equal to u, will imply the existence of a fixed point for hu1. So here, we take h. H is like a homotopy. So we consider A here as a parameter. Consider A here as a parameter. And we are having a family of contractile maps. Okay, so first condition, we require this uniform contraction. Then we assume that on the boundary of the set capital U, there is no lambda for which small u realizes a fixed point of h u lambda. In a third condition, suppose that h is continuous uniformly in A, that is for each u fish have a continuity, and we suppose that okay, for each epsilon in 0 infinity and lambda in 0 1, there is a rho in 0 infinity that is positive, such that the following holds. Okay, the condition doesn't appear. Okay, I'll come back to this part. So the idea here is to give a condition under which we have a fixed point for a map that we are able to index into a parametric set of problems. And this is applicable to Hammerstein equations. So Hammerstein equations, and when we have the kernel K, we have the kernel K, and in that case, problem is to find a simpler kernel. Find a simpler kernel. Okay, now before going back to the more a general setting for multi-value maps, I'd like to clarify what is known about Peros, and recently the definition given by Huang and Zhang that I spoke about in the first part, in the introduction. So, the generalized Peron metric is also known in the literature as a K metric. And the K metric concept has been extended to that of cone metric. So we have some 6-point theorems by Resch, by Radi, and Rogers, all about contractive maps, and they usually consider sets of equations linking a simpler equation to a more complicated one. Okay, I would like to give an idea about the methods of positive operators in general, because their applications include economics. For instance, while dealing with a Leontief economic model, we have matrices with non-negative entries. And in this case, economists are more interested in Perron theorem. And this Perron theorem from Brouwer 6-point theorem. So there is an interconnection between these methods of positive operators, the
Is Douglas still in the meeting? Okay, Douglas is still in the meeting. Um, please, Douglas, please unmute him. Okay, Douglas, you can speak on now.
Okay. From here, share. Okay, so now I'm trying to give an idea about the applications that involve mean positivity, fixed point theorems, and eigenvalue problems. So in
Unmute Douglas, please. The host unmute Douglas. Always check to make sure it's unmuted.
okay, okay. So even about mass transport, there are some models dealing with these positive operators, and there are some conditions on, for instance, lambda in these equations under which we can get existence of solutions. Okay, so now I'd like to go back to a Peirot's theorem. Okay, so in this case, one can try, one can try to take the maximum of the distance di. We have a metric, but we are not sure that the Lipschitz constant that we shall get by taking the maximum of the M pseudo matrix, or by taking the sum, will be less than 1. So we can see Peirot theorem as a tricky way to get a contractive map when we have a system of a finitely many equations for which we don't have immediately a Lipschitz constant less than 1, while taking them as usual. And for the proof of Pavlov theorem, one has to consider the iterative elements Tk. So we take any U0, we take the sequence T to the power k of U, k. Then we first prove that it is a Cauchy sequence, and due to the completeness, we can recover the convergence. And I don't have the computation now, but it's not hard then to simplify the remainder and to get this inequality in the sense of the cone. Now, once this is known for a single value maps, we can think of Hausdorff metric. And because of the notion of Hausdorff metric, we can now consider a set value maps. So for set value maps, we'll consider the set of all non-empty subsets, here name denoted by P of X, the set of closed convex subsets denoted by P in the CL, and here the generalized matrix will be defined on the extended R plus, the sense that we add plus infinity to R plus. And for multi-value maps, fixed point is defined by an inclusion. Fixed point is defined by an inclusion. Okay, so this okay. So y will be a fixed point of t if y belongs to t of y. If y belongs to t of y. Okay, so to obtain the corresponding result for multi-value maps, one uses Hausdorff, also known as Pompeiu-Hausdorff functional, generalized matrix. In the literature, the theorem is known for compact sets, functions which are, okay, say for functions which are upper semi-continuous and allow selections. So when we have a map T from X into a collection of a subset P of S, a selection F of T is just a map F, which is a single value for which F of T belongs to T of S for each X. In this case, the graph of T is obtained here, not with equality, but with this inclusion. Okay, so here, notion of open balls, another using the ordering. We have also the concept of multi-value weakly picker operator. What is the idea? The idea is to consider the iteration like one known in an ordinary differential equation where we use picker iteration. But here it is with multi-value maps. Okay, so the definition is that SG being a metric space, a map T will be multi-value weakly picker if for each Y in S and each Z in T of Y, there exists a sequence of Yn converging sequence of Yn such that the iterates okay, so we have Yn comes from a T, say Yn plus 1, selecting from T of Yn, and at the end of the day, we have a Z in T of Z. Okay, there is some part which is not here. The conditions we need here were first given by Hardy-Rogers, and they managed to obtain a fixed point for multi-value maps under some appropriate conditions. So, in this context, I would like to consider too much the notions of multi-value maps. but I would like to focus on the version of a Perl which can be used for differential systems. So, to emphasize on the title of the speech, I will come back to the idea of a vector value matrix, because this concept has many applications. For instance, in a optimization, we have the concept of a vector optimization, and it is closely linked to multi-criteria optimization. And in these cases, generally, the metrics are not provided, and it is based on the problem that one has to devise the metric and define the cone in which the solution can be obtained. In these slides, I haven't put any formal example, but by the end of the workshop, I will provide some examples that will be useful for any interested reader or follower. Okay, so the notions of generalized matrix sometimes release the conditions on the other two properties. But here the one which is mainly considered is the first one, and it is linked to a pseudo matrix. So, in order to allow questions, I would like to summarize, and based on the questions, I will develop some of the needed concepts or directions. So, in a summary, my wish has been first to shed light on the existence of this concept of vector value matrix. Why are they useful? They are useful when one has to harm a bulk of data, a bulk, systems of equations that cannot be harmed with the standard tools or standard techniques. And in this case, one can think of a vector value matrix, or more generally, cone matrix, and try to find out whether the map that is being considered has a Lipschitz map that converges to 0. When the generalized matrix space is complete and we have a contractive map with a Lipschitz matrix, which is convergent, then we can apply Perov's theorem, which is an analog of the contraction mapping principle. And as applications, we can consider Picard iterations. We can consider some algorithms in optimization or multi-criteria optimization. And this notion is currently being developed because there are many recent papers. There are many recent papers on the topics and on multi-value maps. We have a paper by Goran Liana and Altre, published this year. There is also a paper by Darius Philippe and Petroles. So I will attach the whole list of reference to my file in bio. So I'd like to thank you for your attention and hope that you have grasped the concepts. I am open to your questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, Prof.